I would imagine that people would feel triggered by the topic of authenticity because it makes them wonder if they are. It would immediately be the first thing I would think if it was a new concept, if somebody was like, talking about authenticity, I'd be like, wow, am I an authentic person? And I went through that journey and I asked myself that, and the answer was no. When this first began for me 10 years ago, I was like, and it was the thing, I was like, that's what it is that I don't like about myself. That's the thing, is that I'm fake. I'm wearing all these masks and I can see them now. That was really hard. Oh, it was so confronting. It was so confronting. And I'm just wondering if anybody else feels that. Like, do other people feel triggered talking about authenticity because it makes you wonder about your own? I was addicted to read. I was trying to figure out how to do it, how to wake up, how to be spiritual, like whatever. I was distracting myself by reading and following and chasing and seeking and looking and trying to be and trying to fix and trying to change and all of these things, and to do more yoga and to eat better, and I tried everything under the freaking sun. And it wasn't like I finally gave up. I just wore myself out, is to be honest. I got very depressed and very worn out, and I just was like out of answers. I just didn't know what else to do, and I had to like throw in the towel and surrender and be like, fine, fuck it, I'm over it. I'm just gonna be myself. Ding. and so the first step in becoming authentic then is admitting to being authentic about the fact that we're not. That's that's the step. That is the step. And then from there, we start to notice all the other ways. We start to notice it coming out, and it's hard. It's hard to see our shadows. It's hard to see the parts of ourselves that we didn't want to see, the parts of ourselves that we have been really good at hiding. Usually when we realize it, we're like, okay, yeah, that was kind of obvious. I always knew that. I've just been in denial. I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to own it. I didn't want to be honest about it. And I'm just starting to gain that here on this main page. This is so new for me. I've never had the courage to come on here in front of the whole world. It's like very freaking vulnerable to be seen like this. And yet people do it every day. It's like having a baby. When I had my son, I was like, oh Lordy, how do people do this freaking every day? And they do it again after the first time. Like, these people are mad. People are freaking out of their minds. This is the craziest thing ever. Having a baby is absolutely freaking nuts. Yeah. And I think about 8 billion people. I'm like, okay, just right now there was 8 billion births in the last, however many generations are live now. That's fucking crazy to me. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the F word on here. I honestly, I feel like that is the key, though. It is getting to a point where we don't care what other people think. But there's a whole journey getting to that point. And it starts with recognizing that we care what people think and being able to own that, because I know that the reason that I've been stopped from doing this for 8 years is because I care what people think. And I have to admit that. I have to be honest about that I do. And there's a part of me that doesn't give as many fucks anymore. That's for sure. I wouldn't be here. And there's a part of me that still does, or else I wouldn't feel nervous being here right now. And I'm passionate about it because I've spent so much of my life not being authentic, because I woke up to this part of myself one day. It kind of started with the inner inquiry around what it was about myself that I doubted. We all have some kind of worthiness block, that we undo. Like, it's part of the life journey, is to find that part of ourselves that doubts ourselves and that doesn't know if we're enough. That is very common. So I also have had this worthiness journey, although I wasn't aware of it for a long time. It manifested for me as just feeling like I'm good enough, but it's not great, or there's just some niggle. There was some niggle there that I couldn't quite get to, of why do I feel like I'm not enough? Or there's something wrong with me. There's something that I know is bad about me. Now, this is, I think, very, very common. And so one day what I realized when I really got down into the niggle is that I didn't feel authentic. I didn't feel, I didn't know how I really felt about things. I didn't know what I really thought about things. I noticed that I was acting the way other people around me were acting so that I could fit in. And that's something that started a long time ago, I think in 7th grade, probably. And maybe earlier, I don't know. And there's parts of it I think that were earlier. And this journey with authenticity began for me 10 years ago when not only did I already knew this about myself, I already knew that I didn't feel like I'd always been authentic. I already knew that I felt like I was trying to fit in and people pleasing and all of these things. But I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know how to become authentic. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't think about things in terms of authenticity. It wasn't until 10 years ago when I said something out loud, I heard myself say, I had been on a quote unquote spiritual journey. I'm not even like saying that anymore, for already 10 years. And one day I was so over it. I was like, fuck it. This was my fuck it moment that I've talked about before. Fuck it. I am done being on a spiritual journey and I'm just going to go to the mountains, drink beer and snowboard and be my authentic self or be myself. And be myself is what I said. And I said this out loud to somebody. I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to go be myself. I'm tired of this spiritual journey. And it was a wake-up call. I realized that I was like, well, then who have I been? Who am I being? Why am I not being authentic? Who am I? Who am I really then? And I realized that I didn't, oftentimes I would just say what I thought we were supposed to say or do what I thought we were supposed to do. And it never even occurred to me to ask myself what I actually thought and what I actually wanted, what was true for me. So it was like a revolutionary time that transitioned me from a spiritual journey into a journey of becoming more close to myself, of discovering who I am, what I want, what is my truth? How do I speak my truth? How terrified am I to speak my truth? Why is that? And what do I need to do to de-layer this programming, this conditioning, very much social conditioning. So I've been on that journey now for 10 years. And just, the other reason that I feel like it could be triggering to talk about authenticity is that I'm not claiming to be the most authentic person. I'm on a journey of self-discovery. I'm like layer by layer, like I'm getting there. I just realized how important it is and how far I got from it. And it could be that it doesn't trigger people to talk about authenticity. It could just be totally my story. I think it is probably my story that people see, of how people see me through this lens and project onto me. And that's my stuff. And that's what I get to keep working on here and keep owning. And it's not something I see on social media. About 8 years ago, after I realized this, after I went back to the mountains to drink beer and go snowboarding, and realized that I wasn't being myself, I decided a couple years later to start the Authentic Experience. And I did this challenge for people to post a video every day for 3 weeks, sharing something vulnerable. And I had the vision of it, and I was like, okay, this is where I'm moving, because I just started to become more authentic in life, and I was becoming more vulnerable. And then I would get on camera and I couldn't do it. I was so scared of what people would think. In everything that I would start to talk about that was vulnerable, I would think of somebody out there on social media that I didn't want to hear that, or that it would get back to my son if I was talking about parenting stuff or whatever. I just kept clamming up. And I shut myself down for 8 years where I didn't come on video. I haven't been on video for so long. The whole reason that I started that challenge was because I felt like there was this mass movement of fake booking, like that everyone is becoming a coach and everyone was trying to prove how amazing they were as a coach, that you can get wealth and you can get relationships and you can have, purpose and whatever it is. And then some of those people were reaching out to me in my DMs asking me for support because I was a coach as well. And I was coaching coaches how to have, they were coaching people to have relationships, but they were like, their relationships were failing, or they didn't have one, or there was money coaches that didn't have money. And I got triggered by it. I felt triggered by the fact that I had compared myself to people like that, and that I had felt like something in my life was off and lacking. And here all along, they weren't what they were presenting themselves to be. And I felt, I was like, okay, let's start a movement. Let's start a movement of being real on Facebook, on social media, and not trying to impress people, you know? So I tried, and I feel like I did it. I completed the 3 weeks, but most of what I talked about was just like how scared I was, and how I felt like I was failing and not able to do it. And then I went and hid and deleted all those videos. And like, actually my Facebook page got deleted, so I didn't have to do it myself. But I carried a bit of shame around it, and failure even, that I'm still working with today, even though I'm kind of rebirthing that. I started another group called The Authentic Experience, and it's like the next level of that, because it really includes other people in it, which is what it was originally meant to do. It's like, let's all learn how to do this together. Let's learn how to shed our layers and get more comfortable being live and showing who we really are and being honest, being fucking honest. Like, I was not always as honest as I'd like to feel that I was. It was not always as authentic as I'd like to feel that I was, you know? It's like still hard to admit. Like, in my gene keys, my radiance is truth. And my mom growing up was always like, oh, she's so honest, she always tells the truth. And I'm like, well, I'm not telling you the truth about the fact that sometimes I lie, because that was a thing for me when I was little too. I mean, I was a pretty honest child, but not super. Like, I had my stuff that I wanted to get away with in private. And it's been a full journey of like really learning how to take full ownership for the full me, all of it, and not trying to present as something not there, but just presenting more and more human as much as possible. This is where I'm at, this is who I am, and it's not perfect, and just own our humanity and be imperfect about it, rather than making this resolution like, I'm gonna be this now, and then we get hard on ourselves when we're not. Sometimes I feel like in order to be that, we have to first accept who we are now. And that creating that resolution or holding that bar can actually sometimes get in our way. I do feel like it's getting better. I think that the movement has begun, and people are realizing where they're not being authentic, and they're having the courage to step into that. We're consciously finding our edges now, and we're consciously stepping on them, and we're tenderly giving ourselves permission to stay safe and massage those edges too. I know I have a tendency to barrel past my edge and then wonder why that part of me doesn't trust myself, and to recognize where I need to say, okay, this is my edge, and I'm gonna take a step back where it feels safe, and I'll massage that edge and take a step over consciously, knowing that I can come right back to where I'm safe. That sometimes I need that. Sometimes we need that. And that's where we're at authentically, instead of trying to pretend that we've got it all figured out and that we're light years ahead and trying to convince everyone that we're all put together. And coaches out here, you know, on one level, I don't blame coaches for doing that, for doing this, because I felt like I needed to do it too. Like, I felt like, why would somebody hire me as a coach? And this is when I was coaching. If I don't have my shit together, if I'm posting live about how I don't have my shit together, why is somebody gonna want, you know? So I get why people are doing it, and yet people are drawn more to the truth. And people feel more supported when they feel like you can relate to them, rather than like you're this perfect person that never had to deal with any issue in your life and your shit doesn't stink, so nobody can relate to you, and then you're intimidated by you and you're not approachable. Yeah, what happens when we get real with people? All right, I love you guys.